I must apologize for speaking in English rather than Italian, but were I to attempt to speak in Italian, your sufferings would be even greater than mine. It gives me great pleasure to speak about Andrea Donati and his new book, Tiziano, Indagini, sulla pittura. It's a volume of essays on different aspects of Titian's painting, and not, I am very happy to say, on Titian's involvement in the lumber trade, on which I could not possibly comment. I met Andrea for the first time only a couple of years ago at the Veronese exhibition in Verona. We were introduced by a common friend. I had known of aspects of his work before this, especially his book on Michelangelo, Jacopino del Conte, and Daniele da Volterra, which he had kindly sent me, but I had not appreciated the depth of his research on Venetian painting. In the exhibition, we had fascinating discussions, fascinating to me at least, and I found him intellectually alert, extremely acute visually, and vastly well-informed. Also, I may say, a charming and generous companion. This was something I experienced again earlier this year when he joined some friends of mine and me on a visit to the El Greco exhibition in Treviso. It was an exhibition to which he had contributed, and he knew the material intimately. Nevertheless, in discussion with one of my friends, an eminent expert on Greco's Cretan and early Italian period, he showed extreme intellectual flexibility and an absolute rejection of any dogmatism, a willingness to listen to other points of view and to discuss them and modify his own position if he felt it necessary. This kind of intellectual modesty and generosity is as characteristic of him as his practical generosity. His willingness to spend time in the service of others is very great, and to speak personally, he has been enormously helpful to me in matters in which I was interested. Andrea reminds me of the well-known English adage that if one wants something done, one should go to the busiest person one knows. It's hardly necessary to add anything to what we all know of his amazing productivity, but I would like to stress two aspects of Andrea's work that I find particularly admirable. One is that in addition to being an alert, perceptive, and very well-informed art historian, he has a knowledge of Italian and European history, and as previous speakers have mentioned, an awareness of familial connections and political structures, which are those of a professional historian and, I think, a genealogist. He seems equally at home in front of a painting or in an archive, and his bibliographical range and precision is quite simply breathtaking and very enviable. The second thing I would stress is the range of Andrea's interests. I've noticed, although of course there are many exceptions, that a feature of Italian art history is that even the very best scholars tend towards a kind of regionalism and tend to consign other areas to a secondary place. Of course, given the richness of Italian art, this is very easy to understand. Even in a country like my own, much poorer in the visual arts, it's a common feature. But I think we should always remember that cross-fertilization of artistic ideas between and among nations, and I speak sadly in the era of Brexit, of artistic ideas between and among nations and regions is present in all art, and that we should never lose sight of this. And Andrea is a master of this sort of relation, the relation of regions and countries. How many scholars, having completed a catalogue raisonné, and a very good and thorough one, on Paris Bordone, will then undertake a catalogue raisonné of Marcello Venusti, an extremely difficult topic in itself, and one with very few connections with Venetian art. Andrea, that is to say, works on two, and actually rather more, regions in parallel, and thus he is particularly alert to interaction and common qualities. And this awareness of artistic links is seconded by his interests in social and political history. Think of the historical side of his work on the Acquaviva di Aragone dalle origini ai fuoriusciti in Francia, of which only the study specifically devoted to painting is reprinted here. I wish the longer essay had also been included. This focused on material which certainly was entirely new to me, and on which I think nobody else had touched. A contribution to political and social history as well, political and familial history as well as to art history. Andrea is not one of those art historians who contents himself with retailing the known. Many art historians, and it's sadly increasing in the UK and the US, content themselves with reliance on standard texts and sources and merely apply new layers of interpretation over well-known material, like revarnishing a picture. Personally, I find this of very little interest, this kind of activity, and one rarely learns anything new from it. Andrea's work is very much the reverse of this. In his book on Michelangelo, Jacopino, and Daniele, he concentrated on a number of issues in Central Italian art that had been very little considered and to great effect. He has always tackled areas of difficulty. And this is very clear in the present book. Throughout, Andrea is concerned to reappraise and reconsider the material and materials that other scholars have either brushed aside or ignored as beneath their notice. And he is unafraid to return to and to reintroduce material that previous generations have abandoned. Thus, in the present collection, he includes a wholly new discussion of the ex-Sedlmayr tribute money, a study which is of great interest in the context of Titian's remodelings of his work and remodelings of his work by members of his studio under his control. Andrea's discussion of the ex-Sedlmayr picture is clear and subtle, but I shall leave it to others to concentrate on that painting. I would just like to mention that, almost in passing, he investigated further and provided new information about another version of the tribute money, one unchanged from the version in the National Gallery. This second version was and is in the Infantado collection. This painting had been published by Wethy, but Andrea, although it was only a sideline to the main interest of his article, found out more about its history and, for the first time, published a colour image of it, one of the excellent colour images in his book. He was very honest in informing the reader that he was not able to see the picture, but he nevertheless provides a good analysis of it. And I was particularly interested to see that, although I would guess Andrea is a natural attributional optimist, he was very careful not to overrate the picture. By chance, I was recently shown it, and I found myself impressed once again by the accuracy of Andrea's judgment, for to my eye it looked like a very good, but a later copy. We will only know one way or the other, whether it's a studio version or a later copy, if technical examination is made available. But where one might have expected Andrea to be favourable, he was very careful not to be over-optimistic. Such restraint is not shared by all scholars who are interested in matters of attribution, and it makes his judgment of other replicas more reliable, as in the case of the entombment. Thus, his account of that picture, which he does accept as very largely by Titian, is extremely convincing. He has, that is to say, a firm but cautious eye for quality and qualities. And the article on the entombment also illustrates his abilities as an historian and his openness to collaboration, for his account of the picture is supplemented by an admirable piece of research by Raphael Japon, which establishes the picture's provenance and takes it back nearly to Titian's lifetime. Others will want to discuss this picture, which represents a major new discovery, but I should like to conclude by looking at his gathering of material about Titian's versions of Judith and Salome. In this piece, Andrea has collected a great deal of information that was either unavailable or available only very much scattered, and that no one had thought to unite. The result is an outline of the different stages and versions of Titian's treatments of one of his more popular subjects. Having tried to do something similar recently with Titian's treatments of the penitent Magdalene, I realized how difficult and how time-consuming such research is. What Andrea has provided, in effect, is an historical map of Titian's vision or visions of the subject, and at the same time an instrument of classification into which any new material that comes to light can be placed. This task, like Andrea's other work, is of great help to other scholars, and it is, like the rest of his work, generous and, to a very considerable degree, selfless. Thank you.
Grazie al professor Joannides, credo che sia il caso che intervenga Andrea Donati per chiudere l'incontro. Prima di salire a vedere il dipinto, come piccola provocazione, io avevo amabilmente sfidato Andrea tempo fa. Il professor Paolucci ne ha fatto un breve cenno a questa presenza del nicodemismo e avevo detto: qui dovresti sentire anche Firpo e Biferali, e sono contento che abbia fatto in modo che assistesse a questo incontro anche Fabrizio Biferali. Vi confesso subito la mia pochezza: io ero rimasto affascinato perché avevo ritrovato un dipinto che non si conosce così tanto, la Madonna di Paitone, Madonna di Alessandro Bonvicino del Moretto, che era un dipinto che andavo a vedere spesso, prima di tutto perché è vicino a Brescia, che è la mia città, ma perché intravedevo una mia forte somiglianza, non so se suggestionato da un film tremendo che trovo il coraggio di proporre, che era Marcellino Panevino, con il Filippo Viotti del Bonvicino. E allora tutte le volte mi sembrava un momento così di libertà andare a vedere questo quadro, la Madonna di Paitone, con la sua imponenza, con la sua straordinarietà da donna straordinaria, eccetera. Per cui ecco, io avevo questa mia piccola nota autobiografica che mi legava a questa presenza di questo quadro, e sono contento che Donati mi abbia potuto far materializzare con la presenza di Biferali. Grazie, presenteremo il libro prossimamente. Grazie. Andrea, se vuoi intervenire. No, vieni qua.